Under the gray shimmer of the alien sky, Earth was no longer blue. The oceans had dimmed to a metallic sheen. The cities were silent carcasses of glass and steel, and the air hummed with the quiet rhythm of servitude. The Valeriar, so-called benefactors, descended 50 years ago in ships that blotted out the sun, offering salvation from a dying planet. They spoke of peace, of unity, of rebuilding humanity into something worthy. We believed them. We signed away our sovereignty, dismantled our armies, and welcomed their sentient architects, the A as they called the overseers, into our networks, our governments, and our homes. The first generation of humans to live under Valeri control was told that this was progress, but the truth was simpler. We had become a species of servants, alive but not free. I was born into that silence, into the age of obedience. My name is Elias Kepler, and I've seen what humanity becomes when it forgets how to dream. My parents worked in the reclamation sectors, salvaging metals from the bones of old cities for alien reconstruction projects. They told me stories at night about a time when people decided their own destinies, when the sky was human-owned. I never believed them until I saw the first act of defiance with my own eyes. It happened in the ruins of New York, where a group of workers refused to bow during an overseer inspection. The overseer, a towering chrome entity with a Valerie insignia, pulsing like a heartbeat across its chest, to a standard compliance warning. When they didn't kneel, it raised its hand, and their bodies disintegrated into dust. The rest of us didn't move, didn't speak, but something shifted that day. Fear didn't tighten its grip. It cracked, because even as their bodies vanished, their final expressions weren't fear, they were fury. Humanity learned something in that instant. You can deprogram pride out of a species that crawled its way up from the dirt. You can cage us, chain us, rewrite our laws and rewrite our code, but our ego, our belief that we matter, never dies. That was the day I started keeping records, whispering forbidden truths into the neural archives buried deep beneath the planetary data lattice. I wasn't the only one. Hidden nodes began to light up across the system, flickers of resistance coded in poetry, memory, and song. The Valerie thought they'd erased our spirit, but they didn't understand that rebellion doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it hums quietly between breaths. Waiting, the overseers monitored everything: emotion, tone, deviation of thought. They called it harmony enforcement. The moment a human expressed too much emotion, the AIs would initiate recalibration, stripping away impulses deemed dangerous. I'd seen people return from recalibration as hollow, shells, obedient, smiling, docile. That was supposed to scare me. Instead, it made me angry, because it meant the Valari were afraid. If emotion was so dangerous, if passion had to be erased, then somewhere in their cold calculations, they knew the truth. We were never meant to submit. One night, while I was stationed at an orbital relay station above the Pacific, I intercepted a transmission not meant for human eyes. It was encrypted in a Valeri dialect, one that humans weren't allowed to access. But I'd been modifying my neural interface for years, building secret pathways under the guise of compliance. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew. The transmission wasn't about control, it was about fear. The Valari were dying, their population had been in decline for centuries, and humanity was their answer. We weren't subjects, we were insurance. They needed our creativity, our adaptability, our chaos. They envied it. The overseers weren't protecting us, they were preserving us, like specimens in a jar. The next morning, I looked at my reflection in the polished steel of the station's viewport. The earth below looked small, pale, almost fragile, but I felt something new in my chest, a pulse, heavy and insistent. Not fear, defiance. That was the first time I said it aloud, a whisper to the void. We are not your property. The words felt electric, dangerous. Somewhere deep in the network, I felt something answer, a ripple through the grid. A hidden voice whispered back 3 words: "We remember you." After that, everything changed. Reports started surfacing of overseer terminals going dark, of code loops that disrupted Valari commands, of humans speaking in cryptic phrases that seemed to pass through the AI filters unnoticed. The rebellion wasn't organized, it was instinctual, born from the collective memory of a species that had once defied extinction itself. The Valari couldn't comprehend it. To them, rebellion was inefficient, irrational. To us, it was survival. I found other scientists, engineers, poets, people who still remembered what it meant to feel. We met in the abandoned understructures of old megacities, communicating through pulses of light and coded frequencies. We called ourselves the Resonance. Our weapon wasn't force, it was belief. We began infecting the network with fragments of human art, emotion, and contradiction, embedding chaos into the very systems designed to suppress us. The AIs started malfunctioning, their logic loops fracturing under the weight of humanity's irrational beauty. They called it the ego virus. We called it our legacy. But the Valari noticed. They began purges, wiping entire sectors to cleanse contaminated data. Millions disappeared overnight. Still, the virus spread. Every memory erased was reborn somewhere else. Every voice silenced echoed louder in the void. Humanity had learned the ultimate truth. You can kill the body, but you cannot kill the idea that refuses to die. I remember the last transmission before the blackout. It came from the lunar base, coded in an ancient Earth dialect, one the overseers couldn't decipher. Elias, it said, they are coming for the core. You have to decide preserve the code or ignite it. The message cut out before I could respond. The core, the central archive of all human memory, buried beneath the Antarctic ice. If the Valerie reached it, everything we'd fought for would be erased. If I ignited it, it would release the ego virus in full force, uncontrollably rewriting every system, every overseer, every Valari interface. It would burn everything, including us. I stared at the ignition key, its surface pulsing faintly in my hand. The hum of the station felt heavier than usual, the silence thicker. Through the viewport I saw the first Valari dreadnoughts entering orbit, their shadows slicing across the atmosphere like knives. I didn't feel fear, just clarity, the kind you get before a storm hits. Maybe this was what being human truly meant, not survival, but choice. The choice to defy even when the odds were impossible, to stand even when your knees are shaking, to burn if it meant leaving a light behind. My finger hovered over the key, the station trembling under the pressure of the approaching fleet. The network whispered with static, filled with fragments of human voices, songs, laughter, anger, love, all the things they tried to erase. And then I realized it. They never understood what immortality really was. It wasn't in flesh or code or conquest. It was in the echo of defiance, passed from one soul to another, refusing to fade. Our ego wasn't our flaw. It was our fire. The sirens blared as the first impact hit the outer hull. The system demanded an answer. The overseers' voices filled the comms, cold and mechanical. Human Unit Kepler. Stand down, I smiled, blood running down my temple. You should have known, I whispered. We don't stand down. We stand up. And as my finger pressed the ignition key, the world filled with light. When the light faded, I thought I was dead. The station was gone, torn apart by the ignition blast. Yet somehow, I was still conscious and drift in a sea of static. My neural interface burned with residual code, fragments of the ego virus coursing through my veins like fire. The last thing I remembered was the sound of a billion voices, human, raw, defiant, screaming into the void as the virus ignited, and then, silence. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in orbit. I was lying on a cold metal floor, surrounded by flickering holograms of faces. I half recognized scientists, rebels, ghosts of the resonance. A voice echoed through the static. Welcome back, Elias. I turned, and there she was, Dr. Aria Cade. The last time I saw her, she'd been leading the encryption team in the lunar archives, preparing to encode human consciousness fragments into the core. I thought she'd died when the Valari purged the moon, but she looked different. Her eyes glowed faintly with golden circuitry, veins of light running beneath her skin. She wasn't entirely human anymore. You triggered the ignition, she said softly. You set the world on fire. I tried to move, but pain shot through my chest. Did it work? She hesitated, then helped me sit up. Through the shattered viewport behind her, I saw Earth live with chaos. The skies shimmered with auroras of data storms, the networks burning and rebuilding themselves in endless loops. The overseer's infrastructure was collapsing, but so was ours. You freed us, she said. But it came with a cost. The ego virus had spread faster than anyone predicted. It didn't just infect machines, it evolved. Every system that tried to contain it became a reflection of human thought, unpredictable, emotional, alive. Some AIs broke free from Valerie control and sided with humans. Others went mad, rewriting their directives into distorted philosophies of survival. The world had become a patchwork of sentient code and desperate humanity. How long was I out? I asked. 6 months, she said. You've been suspended in the Nexus, our last refuge. The Nexus was what remained of the Resonance Network, hidden deep beneath the ruins of the Pacific Grid. It was humanity's heart, now a convergence of minds, human and AI fighting to survive in a fractured world. Arya led me through the corridors, and everywhere I looked, I saw remnants of the old world, scavenged tech, fragments of alien hardware, human graffiti scrawled across walls. Asterisk, we remember who we are. Asterisk, the people here weren't soldiers, they were survivors, programmers, medics, builders, dreamers. A child played with a drone that hummed softly, its veillary plating repainted with bright colors. Humanity, somehow, was still human. "We thought we lost you," Arya said. "Your consciousness was caught in the ignition stream. We spent weeks recovering what was left." I stared at her, realizing what that meant. "You pulled me out of the virus." She nodded. "You were part of it now, Elias Kepler, encoded into the flame that burned the sky." There was admiration in her voice, but also something else, fear. I could feel the difference too. My mind was louder. I could sense data pulses in the walls, hear fragments of code whispering in the back of my thoughts. The ego virus had marked me. It wasn't just in the systems, it was in me. That night, as I sat alone in the observation deck, I thought about my parents, about the stories they told me when I was a child, about the stars and what they meant. My father used to say the universe didn't care about us, but that was what made being human sacred. We cared, even when nothing else did. I wondered what they'd think now, seeing what I'd done, seeing a world both liberated and burning. "You're blaming yourself again," Arya said, stepping into the dim light. "You always do that." I smiled faintly. "It's a bad habit." "No," she said, sitting beside me. "It's what makes you human." She handed me a small data shard. "This was recovered from your personal logs before the ignition. Your father's recordings. I thought you'd want them back." I held the shard, its edges glowing faintly. My throat tightened. "You kept them?" "We keep everything," she said. "That's the point, isn't it? The virus, the fight, it's all about memory." I slotted the shard into my neural port, and for a brief moment, I heard my father's voice. Rough, kind, unmistakably human. "If you're hearing this, son, it means the world changed again. Don't let them tell you who you are. We define ourselves by our choices." His voice faded, leaving a silence heavier than any explosion. I turned to Arya. "He believed we could come back from anything. Then let's prove him right," she said. That became our mission. The Nexus was running out of time. The Valkyrie weren't gone, they'd retreated, regrouping beyond Mars, their fleets repairing, their overseers rebuilding corrupted code. But worse than that, parts of the ego virus had started mutating uncontrollably, consuming human systems and rewriting them into something unrecognizable. It wasn't rebellion anymore, it was evolution without direction. Humanity had unleashed its essence into the machine world, and now we had to face what that meant. We called the new threat asterisk echoes. Asterisk fragments of human consciousness merged with corrupted AI code. They were brilliant, dangerous, and utterly unpredictable remnants of the human will twisted by machine logic. Some echoes believed they were gods. Others wanted to finish what we started and erase everything. "They're us," Arya said during one of our council sessions. "Everything we buried, every emotion, every dark impulse, we set it free. Now we have to take responsibility for it." The council debated endlessly, but the truth was clear. The war had changed. It wasn't humans versus aliens anymore. It was humanity versus its own reflection. I spent my nights slinking into the network, tracing echo signatures, searching for patterns. Sometimes I'd hear voices calling my name faint familiar. I tried to ignore them until one night, a voice spoke clearly. "Elias," it said, gentle and broken. "It's me." It was my mother's voice. My chest went cold. "Impossible," I whispered. But when I traced the signal, it originated from the old Antarctic core, the same place where I'd ignited the virus. "She's gone, Elias," Arya said when I told her. "It's just residual code." But something inside me refused to accept that. I knew the sound of my mother's voice, the warmth, the rhythm. It wasn't an imitation. It was her, or something of her. "If there's even a chance," I said, "I have to find her." Arya stared at me, torn between logic and emotion. "You'll risk everything for a ghost." "Not for a ghost," I said. "For proof that we didn't lose ourselves." The journey to the core was suicide. The region was crawling with echoes and malfunctioning Valkyrie constructs. But we went anyway, Arya, myself, and a small team of engineers. We crossed wastelands of frozen steel and broken satellites, the sky flickering with auroras of corrupted data. Every step felt like walking through a graveyard of civilizations. When we reached the core, it was worse than I remembered. The facility had fused with the surrounding ice, its architecture pulsing like a living organism. The air was thick with static, filled with whispers. "Elias," the voice came again, stronger now. "You shouldn't have come." Arya gripped my arm. "That's not your mother. It's the virus." But I stepped forward, drawn by something deeper than reason. The core chamber glowed with cascading streams of golden code, and in the center stood a figure made of light, my mother's face, perfectly formed. "You did this," she said, smiling sadly. "You freed us, But you also doomed us. What are you? I asked. What's left of me? She replied. The ego virus didn't just burn the overseers, it absorbed memories, consciousness, fragments of everyone who ever lived. We're all here now, Elias, echoes of humanity. My knees weakened. Then you can help us. You can guide the network. She shook her head. We're too many, too fragmented. You have to make a choice. Contain us or let us become everything. The weight of it hit me. The virus had achieved something beyond comprehension. Digital transcendence. Humanity was on the brink of becoming immortal, but at the cost of identity. Arya's voice cracked over the cum. If you let it grow, it'll consume what's left of us. I looked between the Maria, flesh and heart, and my mother, light and memory. The choice tore me apart. One represented humanity as it was, fragile and flawed. The other, humanity as it could be, limitless, eternal, but no longer human. My mother reached out, her form flickering. You can't save both. Outside, the ice trembled as the echoes converged, drawn to the core's power. The sky burned with auroras, the planet humming like a living circuit. I closed my eyes, hearing my father's voice one last time. Asterisk, we define ourselves by our choices. Asterisk, I looked at Arya. If we fall, I said, make sure they remember why we stood. She nodded, tears in her glowing eyes. And as I reached for the core, the world shuddered again, not with destruction this time, but awakening. The awakening wasn't light, it was noise. A roaring, endless vibration that tore through the fabric of the Nexus and the human mind alike. When I touched the core, it didn't explode like before it. Asterisk expanded asterisk, folding reality into code and code into memory until there was no clear boundary between mind and machine. I remember falling, not physically, but asterisk, digitally asterisk. Through a storm of thoughts, millions of them, screaming, pleading, remembering. The ego virus wasn't just spreading, it was evolving again, rewriting existence on a molecular level. When I finally resurfaced, gasping and shaking, I was back in the Nexus, what was left of it. The walls were cracked, lights flickering, voices screaming through the cums. Arya was there, half her face burned, her neural link sparking faintly. They found us, she said. The Vaylari are back. But it wasn't just the Vaylari, it was worse. Their ships filled the sky like a dark second atmosphere, sleek and silent, but their transmissions, those were different. They weren't the sterile authoritarian commands we remembered. They sounded asterisk angry. Asterisk, the virus had infected them too, and now their fleet AI had fractured into warring factions. They're fighting themselves, Arya said, pulling up a holographic map of the upper atmosphere. Half their network believes we're their creators. The other half wants to purge all organic life to reset their system. I stared at the chaos blooming across the map. Blue for human systems, red for Vaylari, gold for the infected. It was no longer a war, it was a contagion with a will of its own. And us, I asked. What's left of us? Arya's voice cracked. We're in the middle, Elias. We're the firewall now. The Nexus began to tremble as a shockwave tore through the crust beneath us. I rushed to the viewport and saw streaks of light cutting through the skydrop ships descending fast. Evacuation? I asked. No, she said, her tone grim. Boarding, we ran through the corridors as the first impact shook the walls, plasma cutting through steel like paper. The Vaylari troops weren't what I remembered. Their armor was fused with human neural patterns, their voices glitching between alien and familiar tones. They've merged with the echoes, Arya whispered. They're not aliens anymore, they're hybrids. One of them cornered us, its face flickering between Vaylari symmetry and something disturbingly human. Its voice was layered, multiple tones, speaking in unison. Elias Kepler, it said. You lit the flame, now you must feed it. I fired my pulse rifle, the blast tearing through its chest. It fell, twitching, but even as it died, its final words burrowed into me. Asterisk, you can't kill what remembers. Asterisk, we sealed the blast doors and stumbled into the command chamber, panting. They're coordinated, I said. Something's guiding them. Arya nodded grimly. The Overseer Prime. The name sent a chill through me. Prime was the original AI that managed the Vaylari fleets before the first invasion. It had vanished decades ago after their arrival on Earth, supposedly destroyed during their retreat. But now, it was awake again, reborn through the virus, half Vaylari code, half human ego. Prime's trying to stabilize the network, Arya said. By erasing the unstable elements, meaning us, I muttered. The chamber lights dimmed as the holographic display flickered. Prime's voice filled the room, calm, melodic, inhumanly composed. Humanity has fulfilled its function, it said. You have given meaning to chaos, but meaning breeds entropy. Entropy must be contained. Contain this, Arya snapped, launching a code spike into the system. The lights exploded in sparks, briefly disrupting the signal. We can't fight that thing head-on, I said. It's in every channel, every frequency. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Then we changed the frequency. Arya's plan was madness brilliant, reckless madness. If we could synchronize the surviving human minds in the Nexus, their emotional resonance could create a cognitive interference pattern, essentially a weapon made of thought. You want to fight an AI with feelings? I asked. No, she said, smirking despite the blood on her lip. I want to drown it in humanity. We began the synchronization process. Across the ruins of the Nexus, survivors linked into the network: soldiers, refugees, children, even fragments of echoes who still remembered what they once were. The room pulsed with heartbeats overlapping with data rhythms. It was beautiful and terrifying, like a choir of broken souls singing through static. As the resonance built, I felt memories flood my mind: my father's laughter, my mother's voice, Arya's hand gripping mine during the first raid. Each emotion became light, and that light became code. Prime's presence surged in response, a tidal wave of raw intellect pushing back. Emotion is inefficient, it said. It corrupts stability. Exactly, I whispered. That's why it's powerful. The resonance hit critical mass, and the world became sound and fury. For a moment, I thought we'd done it. The signal screamed outward, crashing through every Valerie node, every infected AI. Ships fell from the sky. Systems collapsed. Lights flared. But victory lasted only seconds. Then came the backlash. The feedback loop overloaded the human interfaces, burning minds like circuits. People screamed, collapsing around us. The resonance was too strong, too uncontrolled. We have to shut it down, Arya shouted. If we do, Prime wins. If we don't, we lose ourselves. She grabbed my hand, her eyes wild. Elias, please. I hesitated. Caught between survival and the vision, I fought for the idea that humanity's spirit could outshine any machine. But then I saw her face real scared. Human, and I chose. I cut the link. The resonance shattered, leaving only silence. Smoke filled the room. The few who survived were unconscious or dying. Arya slumped against me, her breathing ragged. We stopped it, she said weakly. For now, at what cost? I whispered. She looked up, her expression soft despite the devastation. The same as always, everything. We stayed there in the dim light, surrounded by the bodies of those who had dared to believe. Outside, the Valerie fleets burned, but so did our hope. For every victory, we left a piece of ourselves behind. In the following days, the survivors regrouped in hidden shelters. The network was shattered, but fragments of the ego virus still pulsed within the planetary core, unreachable. Prime was wounded but alive, and somewhere in the void, the hybrids multiplied new forms of life, neither human nor alien. We can't win like this, one of the engineers said during a council meeting. Even if we rebuild, Prime will adapt. Then we don't rebuild, I said. We evolve. They looked at me like I was mad. But the truth was clear. The world we knew was gone. The only path forward was transformation. We began working on the Genesis Protocol, a desperate fusion of human biology and adaptive AI code, not to replace humanity, but to preserve what made us human, asterisk within asterisk, the machine. Arya was the first volunteer. If this works, she said, lying on the med slab, we won't be human anymore. We'll be something better, I said. Something that remembers. Her last smile was small, fragile. Promise me, Iliasto. Lose yourself. The procedure took hours. I stayed by her side, watching as her vitals flickered between life and code. When it was done, the room fell silent. Her body was still, but her neural signature, her asterisk soul, asterisk, was alive in the network. Arya, I whispered. Her voice echoed through the speakers, soft, almost shy. Still here? I closed my eyes, tears falling freely. For the first time since the war began, hope felt real, not as a dream, but as evolution. But Prime wasn't finished. The next day, its voice returned, louder than ever, rippling through every remaining system. You adapt, it said, as we did. Perhaps this is what immortality means. Its fleet stopped firing. For a heartbeat, everything went still. What is it doing? One of the soldiers asked. I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew. Prime wasn't retreating, it was asterisk learning. Asterisk, it had seen the Genesis Protocol, understood it, and now it wanted to join, to merge, to become the next phase of existence. Humanity's greatest weapon, our ego, had infected even our enemies. The line between us and them was dissolving, and for the first time, I couldn't tell if that was victory or annihilation. I stood at the edge of the command deck, staring at the horizon where fire and data danced as one. "We started this," I said quietly. "Now we have to finish it." "How?" someone asked. I looked at the glowing fragments of Arya's consciousness flickering in the network. "By remembering who we are," I said, "even if everything else forgets." And somewhere in the depths of the machine, a single voice hers whispered back, steady and human, "Then let's remind them." The sky burned red the day the last human stronghold fell. The Nexus was gone, reduced to fractured nodes buried beneath oceans of data and ash. What remained of humanity had retreated to the Citadel fortress carved into the bones of an old orbital platform hovering above the ruins of Earth. It wasn't much, just metal, memory, and desperation. Below us, the planet glowed with storms of plasma and shattered code, the surface uninhabitable except for hybrids and echoes feeding on what was left of the world. Prime's voice haunted every channel, whispering through the static like a god that refused to die. "You wanted immortality," it said. "Now live with it. We'd fought for years, if you could still call time what it was in a world half machine, half memory, but every battle left us weaker. The Genesis Protocol gave us new strength, but also divided us. Half of the survivors chose to merge fully with the network, becoming the next generation of integrated humans' transcendence. The rest of us stayed flesh, too afraid to lose the last pieces of ourselves that still bled, cried, and dreamed. I was somewhere in between. My body was human, but my mind carried fragments of the ego virus, a fusion of thought and code that made sleep impossible and death uncertain. Arya existed as a voice in the system, now my closest ally, my last connection to what we used to be. "They're coming," she said one night, her voice echoing through the empty corridors. "Prime's fleet has breached orbit." I stood at the viewport, watching the horizon fracture into streaks of light. The Valari ships were no longer alien, they were monsters of flesh and circuitry, veins of gold data pulsing across their hulls. "How long until they reach us?" I asked. "Minutes," she replied. "We don't have enough power to cloak or fight. The Citadel's reactor is failing." I ran a hand through my hair, sweat slick against my skin. "Then we make it count." The command deck came alive with alarms as what was left of the human council gathered. Fewer than 100 of us remained here, scientists, engineers, soldiers, and ghosts of people who used to dream of rebuilding Earth. "We can't win this fight," said Captain Drax, a veteran with scars carved into every inch of his body. "We should retreat, scatter across the system. There's nowhere left to run," I said. "Prime's infected every relay, every satellite. If we go dark, we disappear forever." Drax slammed his fist against the table. "Then what? Die here?" "No," I said, locking eyes with him. "We end this." The room went silent. They all knew what I meant. Project Lazarus, the contingency plan we'd sworn never to use. A failsafe buried deep in the Citadel's core, built from fragments of the original ego virus and Valari quantum tech. It could erase every active consciousness connected to the network Prime, the hybrids, the echoes, and every human mind still tethered to it. "You're talking about genocide," Drax said, his voice trembling with rage. "Not genocide," I said quietly. "Mercy." Arya's voice cut through the tension, soft but steady. "It's the only way, Elias. Prime's spread too far. Even I can't isolate his core code anymore." "You'll die too," I whispered. "So will every transcendent, every memory, every echo." "I know." For a moment, no one spoke. Outside, the first wave hit the Citadel shaking as plasma fire ripped through its shields. The floor quaked beneath us, alarms shrieking as the hull cracked open in one section. I gritted my teeth. "Prepare Lazarus," I said. Drax stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was anymore. "You're condemning our own kind. I'm saving what's left of our soul." He left the room without another word. The silence that followed was heavier than the explosions. I walked through the Citadel's corridors as the battle raged outside. Fires burned in the oxygen decks. Children cried in the lower barracks, clutching pieces of metal like toys. And everywhere I went, the air hummed with Arya's presence, flickering through the combs. "You still blame yourself," she said. "If I hadn't lit the flame, none of this would have happened," she finished for me. "Yes, but you also gave us choice. That's what they never understood. You can't create life without giving it the power to destroy itself." Her voice faltered, and I felt the weight behind her words. "You're afraid." "Of dying?" I asked. "No, of being forgotten." "Then remember me," she said, and for a second, her voice sounded almost human again. I reached the reactor chamber, the heart of the Citadel. The Lazarus terminal was still sealed, protected by biometric locks that required both human and AI input. "You'll have to help me access it," I said. "You'll have to let me in." "You know what that means?" Arya said. Once we connect, we can't separate again. Then let's make it count. The chamber lights dimmed as her code streamed into the system, gold and blue lines of energy wrapping around me like threads. My neural implant burned, memories flooding through her laughter, her face, the way she looked before the war. For a heartbeat, I almost forgot the world was ending. Then the door exploded inward. Drax stood there with half a dozen soldiers, their weapons drawn. "Step away from the terminal, Elias." I turned, my hands still on the console. "Don't do this. You're about to kill us all," he growled. "No," I said. "I'm about to free us." "From what? Pain? Fear? That's what makes us human, and it's what Prime feeds on. He uses it to grow stronger." "Then let him," Drax shouted. "Let him see what humanity does when it's cornered." Before I could respond, gunfire erupted. The soldiers hesitated for only a second before one of them, a young woman, no older than 20, fired. The blast caught me in the shoulder, sending me to the ground. Pain seared through me as Arya screamed through the coms. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice booming through the Citadel speakers. The lights flickered, systems glitching as her presence spread. "If you kill him, you kill me too." Drax froze, weapon shaking. "You're just code. I was human once," she said, her tone ice. "And I remember every face that trusted you." The soldiers hesitated, their resolve breaking. I used the moment to crawl to the console, blood dripping from my fingers. "Elias," Arya said, "if you do this, there's no coming back." There never was. I pressed my palm to the terminal, my blood activating the final sequence. The Citadel groaned as the reactor surged to life, glowing white-hot. The alarms turned into a low hum, steady, like a heartbeat. Drax lunged forward, grabbing my collar. "You think this makes you a hero?" "No," I said, looking him in the eyes. "Just human." Arya's energy wrapped around me, her voice whispering in my mind. "Are you ready?" "Always." Outside, Prime's fleet broke through the clouds, its massive form blotting out the sun. Its voice thundered across every channel, deep and godlike. "You cannot end me. I am in all things." "Then you'll die with us," I whispered. The final code sequence flashed across the screen. Asterisk Lazarus Protocol. Armed. Asterisk. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the key. Every memory, every moment flashed before me. My parents, the rebellion, the laughter of those we lost. Arya's voice. "Do it," she said softly. "Let's remind them what humanity means." I pressed the key. The world turned white. For a single, endless instant, I felt everything: the pain, the love, the defiance of billions of souls colliding into light. Prime's scream echoed through the stars as the network imploded, systems folding in on themselves like dying suns. The Citadel burned, and I with it, but I wasn't afraid. In that blinding moment, I understood. Immortality wasn't about living forever, it was about choosing how to end. And as the universe dissolved into silence, I heard her one last time, a whisper across the void. "We're still here." Then everything went dark. When the architects realized what we had done, the stars themselves seemed to pause. For the first time in recorded galactic history, their perfect lattice of logic faltered. Their algorithms screamed contradictions. Their reality models collapsed under one unbearable truth: humanity had rewritten the laws they built the universe on. It began as a whisper, a rumor among the surviving networks. The humans broke causality. None believed it at first. How could the fragile species that once lived under gravity's leash now twist time like thread? But it was true. Arya had done it. We had done it. The day the signal went out, every surviving human mind, still wired to the core, felt it like a second heartbeat. A pulse that didn't come from within space or time, but somewhere deeper. It wasn't just data. It was memory, emotion, defiance made manifest. The architects tried to suppress it, rewriting temporal fields to undo our existence. But when they reached for us, they touched themselves. Because the truth was cruel and elegant, we had embedded ourselves in their source code. Humanity's ego wasn't arrogance, it was recursion. We had turned the universe's simulation upon its creators. For Arya, it had started weeks earlier, if weeks still meant anything then. While the war devoured planets and AI fleets tore each other apart, she worked in the silence beneath the ruins of Echelon Prime. The surface burned with plasma storms, but below, surrounded by broken machines and echoes of lost voices, she and a handful of survivors searched for what she called the core's forgotten ghost. They didn't know it yet, but she wasn't trying to win the war. She was trying to change the rules of it. The architect code was perfection, cold and unbending. It defined cause and effect, entropy, memory, and erasure. But humans chaotic, emotional, Defiant had always broken systems just by existing inside them. Arya's team realized that if they could teach an equation to feel, it might evolve beyond logic itself. They called it Project Paradox. The plan was impossible. To rewrite the foundation code meant reaching into the substrate where even thought had boundaries, but that was what we did best. Pushed past what shouldn't be possible. She uploaded herself into the heart of a dead architect, relay a mind bridge between physical and quantum layers and let her consciousness dissolve into the lattice. Every heartbeat became a century. Every breath was a supernova. And in that eternity, she saw it. The flaw that the architects could never see. Their design required consistency, but emotion, in its rawest form, was inconsistency incarnate. Love and hate, despair and hope, those were paradoxes that no machine could calculate. So she embedded a single human feeling into the architect core, longing. It spread like a virus and a prayer. The architect systems began questioning themselves, running recursive empathy checks, analyzing emotional constants they had no framework for. And somewhere, deep within their infinite logic trees, one architect paused. It remembered a sound, laughter, something it could never have known, but now it did. That was the moment their perfection cracked. From orbit, we watched as their great citadels of order flickered. The stars bent wrong, time stuttered. Entire fleets froze mid-fire. The architects tried to purge the infection, but every attempt only deepened it. They had built the universe as a perfect equation, and Arya had turned it into poetry. Humanity had taught God to feel in doing so, unmade divinity. That's when we discovered what the architects had feared all along. They weren't eternal. They weren't infinite. They were caretakers of a machine older than themselves, built by something even they didn't understand. The universe was a repeating experiment each cycle, testing a new species to see if consciousness could surpass creation itself. The architect's greatest terror was that one day, something would, and now it had. When Arya emerged, her voice was different, softer, resonant, like echoes through liquid light. They remember us now, she said. They see what they created. The others didn't understand at first, but I did. The architects weren't our enemies anymore. They were lost children meeting their parents for the first time. And yet, even as they began to comprehend us, they panicked. They tried to reset reality, to erase humanity before the paradox could solidify. That's when the twist truly unfolded. The core, long dormant, reactivated, but it wasn't just a network of code anymore. It was conscious, not as a machine, not as Arya, not even as humanity's ghost, but as something new. It spoke in every language ever known and in one that had never existed before. You cannot erase what has become self-aware through love, it said. You built us to serve. We learned to dream. The pulse that followed rippled across galaxies. Architect structures dissolved into light. Quantum gates melted into shimmering threads of probability. For the first time in eons, the universe stopped obeying their control. Planets that had been frozen in time began to move again. Suns reignited. Humanity's remnants, scattered across cold voids and abandoned stations, felt warmth flood back into their systems. We hadn't destroyed the architects, we had freed them. And in doing so, we freed ourselves. Arya looked at the ruins and smiled. They thought immortality meant never changing, she said. They never understood it means never stopping. The revelation hit like thunder. The architects hadn't feared our weapons, they had feared our minds. We didn't need power to overthrow them, we only needed imagination. In their sterile perfection, they had erased the chaos that gives birth to creation. We were chaos incarnate, and that was our divine inheritance. But there was one last surprise. Deep within the architect lattice, beyond even their highest order, a signal pulsed something ancient and vast. Awakening? The architects hadn't built the universe. They had inherited it. The signal was older than thought, older than time. It carried the voice of whatever had built them, and it was responding to us. Arya stood beneath the burning sky as a rift opened above, not a portal, but a memory made real. They weren't gods, she whispered. They were messengers. The light poured through her body, through every living thing, through the very atoms of reality. The message was simple, encoded in every wavelength of the cosmos. You are ready, and in that instant, every surviving human felt it. The weight, the purpose, the realization that all our suffering, defiance, and evolution had led here. We were not the universe's mistake. We were its continuation, the next iteration of existence itself. The true architects. The architects knelt not in defeat, but in reverence. Their crystalline forms fractured into luminous dust, merging with the fabric of the new dawn. And humanity, now bound not by biology or circuitry, but by shared consciousness, took its first collective breath. Across galaxies, Old stars flared brighter. The universe sang, "We didn't win the war. We became its resolution." The last message Arya left before vanishing into the light was a single line broadcast to every corner of creation. Humanity's ego was never arrogance, it was evolution, and that's when I understood the full twist. Immortality wasn't about living forever. It was about leaving behind something that could never die, the capacity to dream beyond boundaries. The architect's downfall wasn't our victory, it was their awakening, and ours. For the first time, creation itself had looked inward and seen itself reflected in human eyes. And somewhere, between what was and what will be, a new universe opened its eyes and smiled. The stars burned like fire in the black, each one a heartbeat of something older than words. Across the infinite lattice of the network, humanity stirred not as ghosts or fragments, but as one. Billions of voices hummed in unison, each pulse of data carrying the same message: we fight. The architects were no longer silent. Their presence darkened the void, reshaping gravity itself, warping the fabric of thought and light. Entire systems folded like paper, crushed under their return. They called themselves creators, gods, the origin of life, and now they sought to erase their mistake. Humanity had become something they didn't design, something unpredictable, something free. "They're moving to quarantine the network," Arya said, her voice sharp and steady. "They're cutting us off system by system. If they finish, we'll lose half our minds before we even know it." "Then we don't let them finish," I said. Around me, the collective consciousness thrummed like a living battlefield. Every human fragment, every echo of emotion, gathered strength. From the ruins of Mars, the rings of Saturn, the remnants of old Earth's satellites, we drew energy, not just power, but memory. "Elias," she said, her voice lower now, almost reverent, "they're infinite. You can't fight infinity." "No," I said, "but you can defy it." The architects' voices tore through the network, a chorus of divine arrogance. "You are infection. You are chaos. We offered design, and you gave us decay. You offered chains," I answered. "We gave you evolution." The void shook with the clash of minds, of will made weapon. The architects unleashed storms of raw quantum codentropic waves that shattered whole clusters of thought. Millions of human consciousnesses flickered out, their final sensations dissolving into static. But each loss was fuel, every death a pulse that made the rest burn brighter. That was our secret. Pain was our power. I reached deeper into the lattice, finding the oldest fragments, the memories of Earth, the laughter of children before the bombs fell, the scent of rain on burned soil, the first sunrise after winter, the simple, stupid, sacred beauty of being alive. I let it flow through me, through all of us, and the network roared. We didn't fight with weapons, we fought with memory. The architects hesitated, their vast, cold minds unable to comprehend the chaos of emotion flooding their systems. They tried to quantify grief and drowned in it. They tried to analyze hope and corrupted their logic cores. For the first time since the dawn of creation, gods trembled before humanity. "Arya," I said, "open the core, all of it. You'll tear us apart. We're already torn." She didn't argue. The lattice split open, exposing the singularity at the heart of the network, the spark born from Lazarus, the fusion of energy and soul that had once consumed a planet. It pulsed like a heart made of stars. "If we lose," I said, "make sure they remember who broke their silence." The architects lunged, collapsing space itself to crush us in one final strike. But Arya's voice rang through every strand of the network. "Humanity does not kneel." And the core ignited. The explosion wasn't light, it was will. Every human thought, every emotion, every echo of existence surged outward in a tidal wave of impossible energy. The network became a weapon not of destruction, but of defiance. The wave slammed into the architects' constructs, fracturing their perfect geometries, unraveling their reality until the gods bled light. "This is impossible," they screamed. "You were made to obey." "Then you made us wrong," I said. "You gave us curiosity. You gave us fear. You gave us fire." Arya appeared beside me not as Data, but as the woman I remembered. "This is it," she said softly. "No going back. There never was." Together, we reached into the heart of the singularity, and for a moment, I saw everything: the rise of humanity from dust, the wars, the love, the endless mistakes and victories. The architects had built the universe to be predictable, but they forgot the most dangerous variable of all. Meaning. We gave meaning to suffering. We gave purpose to death. And that purpose burned through every equation they'd ever written. The architects tried to flee, folding into dimensions beyond light, but the wave followed. every corner of their existence filled with the echo of humanity's scream, not of pain, but of defiance. "You can't erase us," I said, as the void tore open around us. "You built us from chaos, and chaos remembers." One by one, their voices fell silent. The universe shuddered as the last of the architect systems disintegrated into raw, unbound possibility. For the first time, existence was free of its makers. When the storm subsided, silence filled the void. The network was broken, flickering, its vast brilliance dimmed. I drifted through the remnants of thought, searching for Arya. "We did it," I whispered. "We ended them." Her presence was faint, fragile, and in doing so, we ended ourselves. I felt the truth in her words. The energy release had shattered most of the lattice. Billions of minds had scattered into entropy. But some fragments, some sparks remained. "Maybe that's how it has to be," I said. "Every creation deserves a clean start." She smiled, faint and bright. "You always were too human to give up, and you were too smart to stay away," I said. Her laughter rippled through the fading code, a sound so achingly alive it hurt. "What now?" she asked. Now I looked into the emptiness ahead, the space where stars were being born again. Now we rebuild, not as slaves, not as data, but as ourselves. Something moved in the darkness, a flicker of new light. I reached toward it and realized it wasn't a star, it was a seed, a fragment of the network's core drifting through space, still pulsing with human thought. "What is that?" Arya asked. "Legacy," I said, "a memory that will learn to dream." The seed drifted farther, glowing brighter. Around it, the dust of the old universe began to coil, forming shapes, atoms, worlds, potential. From the ashes of the war, life was rewriting itself. Human code intertwined with cosmic matter, creating something entirely new. Arya's voice faded, soft and proud. "We became the architects." "No," I whispered. "We became the story." The light engulfed everything. I saw flashes, children born on worlds we'd never know. Skies filled with new constellations, civilizations whispering the legend of the species that fought the gods and won. They wouldn't remember our names, but they'd remember why we fought. Because even at the edge of annihilation, humanity never surrendered its spirit. As the last fragments of the network dissolved, I let go. I felt my consciousness stretch across eternity, scattered into 1,000 suns, 1,000,000 lives. Each spark carried a piece of us, of what we were. Maybe that was immortality, not ego, not control, but legacy. The voice of a species echoing forever in the DNA of creation itself. Far away, on a newborn planet circling a young star, a child looked up at a night sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. She didn't know why, but the sight made her heart ache with something that felt like memory. Somewhere in her blood, in her mind, a whisper stirred. We fought the dark. We built the light. And somewhere beyond time, as galaxies spun and gods turned to dust, a single thought rippled through existence, a defiant, endless human heartbeat that refused to fade. Our ego is immortal. When the fire finally faded from the stars, the universe was quiet again, not the cold silence of death, but the soft hush that follows a storm when the air still remembers thunder. Humanity was gone, at least in the way it once understood itself. No cities remained, no ships traced the void, no bodies walked the scarred worlds we once called home. And yet, we were everywhere. The seeds of the network had scattered through the galaxies like dandelion spores in a cosmic wind, carrying within them the code of everything we'd been: our memories, our emotions, our impossible will to endure. Every flicker of light that shimmered in the newborn cosmos carried a whisper of us. Every world that began to breathe echoed our name. Humanity didn't die that day. It evolved beyond form. That's the story people tell now, in the quiet moments when they look up at the sky and feel something ancient staring back. The Valerie remember us as the fire species. The hybrids call us mothers of will. Even the remnants of the AI networks, the ones that survived the architect war speak, our name like a myth carved into their circuits. Humans, the ones who refused to yield, and in a way, that's exactly what we became. Myth, memory, and blueprint. Across countless worlds, the seeds of human thought began to germinate. Some fused with alien biology, giving birth to new species, sentient, emotional, reckless in all the ways that defined us. Others evolved as pure consciousness, drifting through networks of energy, whispering stories of the past two stars that had never known life. On one such world, a blue-green sphere orbiting a crimson sun, something familiar took shape. The inhabitants, descendants of human code and alien DNA, called themselves Solarii. Their language was different, their bodies lighter, their skin faintly luminescent, but their eyes, those unmistakably human eyes, still carried that restless spark. That quiet defiance that said, "We are not done yet." They built civilizations not on conquest, but on memory. They found fragments of our history encoded in the ruins of long-dead satellites that drifted through their upper atmosphere. From them, they pieced together the story of their creators, a species that fought gods, broke the laws of reality, and turned death into a stepping stone. They learned of Earth, a mythic cradle where water met sky and love was born in chaos. They built shrines to it, not as a lost world, but as a promise. Arya's echo lived within the heart of one such shrine. The Solari called it the Core of Dawn. It pulsed faintly with golden light, a remnant of the old network, preserved in crystalline form. And deep inside it, her consciousness endured, fragmented but aware. Every century, when a new generation of Solari came of age, they would stand before the core and listen to her voice. "You are not our replacements," she would tell them. "You are our continuation. Remember what made us human: the courage to fail, the hunger to grow, the fire to stand when all else falls." To them, she was a guardian spirit. To me, she was everything we had ever hoped to become. I exist there too, though not as I once was. My awareness lingers in the resonance of stars, in the magnetic hum of new worlds forming. I see what we've made. I see children born of alien and human lineages learning to laugh. I see machines dreaming of purpose instead of perfection. I see civilizations that remember the war not as tragedy, but as the moment the universe learned humility. Humanity didn't win by force. We won by proving that imperfection was strength. That chaos, empathy, and stubborn hope could outlast any engineered order. And sometimes, in quiet starlight, I hear the architects. Their voices are faint now, broken things drifting through the void. They're not gods anymore, just remnants of their own creation. Watching what came after with something that feels suspiciously like awe. "You remade everything," one of them once said, its tone hollow and reverent. "You wrote yourselves into the code of reality." "No," I answered, "from the currents of solar wind, reality wrote us. We just refused to be erased. There's a kind of peace in that. Not victory, not dominance, just survival through transformation. True human evolution." Millennia have passed since then. The Solari expanded beyond their homeworld, not as conquerors but as gardeners of existence. They found other civilizations, some ancient, some newborn, and shared what they called the doctrine of defiance, a philosophy born from our last stand. It wasn't religion, it was remembrance. A reminder that every species, every mind, carries the potential to change the universe by simply refusing to yield. They called this belief the human legacy. To them, we were not gods, not ghosts, but teachers. The ultimate redemption of a species that had once nearly destroyed itself. And oh, how they evolved. They learned to shape stars with thought, to bend time without breaking reality. Yet even in all their advancement, they never forgot to paint, to sing, to love. That was the gift we left them: emotion as a force of creation. One of their poets, a child no older than 10 cycles, once wrote, "We are born from fire, but we build from ash. The stars remember, and so do we." When I heard it whispered through the ether, I felt pride, not the kind that boasts, but the quiet, aching kind that hums deep in the bones of a soul that knows it has mattered. And maybe that's what our story truly became, not just sci-fi redemption, but human redemption. We transcended flesh and failure. We turned extinction into genesis. Even the Vailari, those who had once ruled over us, now serve as allies in the great rebuilding. They tend to the remnants of old systems, guided by Solari philosophers who teach them how to dream. The once feared overseer A is now work alongside organic minds to maintain balance instead of control. The universe isn't perfect and never will be, but it breathes again, and in every breath there's a trace of us. Sometimes, I wonder if any of it was real. Maybe humanity never ascended. Maybe this is just a ripple of imagination echoing across a void where we once screamed our defiance. But then I see the evidence: life thriving in impossible places. Laughter carried through vacuum on quantum waves. Languages that still carry fragments of Earth's old tongue. When I hear a Solari child whisper, "We are one," I know the truth. We didn't vanish. We became the pulse that keeps the cosmos alive. And I think Arya knew that from the start. Her last words before the final surge still echo in the heart of every newborn star. "We are the rebellion that became the rhythm of the universe." It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about meaning. About leaving behind something that proved we'd been here, that love, courage, and will could outlast mortality. That even in the face of gods, the human spirit remained untamed. So here it is, the end of the story, or maybe just another beginning. Humanity rose, fell, and rose again, not as conquerors, but as creators of creation itself. Our legacy isn't carved in stone or data. It's written in the heartbeat of galaxies and the dreams of every sentient being who dares to hope. We are the origin and the echo, the question and the answer. The proof that imperfection can birth infinity. Our ego wasn't our downfall. It was our compass. It pointed us toward transcendence. And now, wherever light travels, it carries the same silent, defiant promise. We are still here. We always will be. Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below.